I'm not the kind of guy who makes dramatic speeches online, so I'll start with the part I'm still embarrassed to admit. I paid for my boss's promotion party. Not because I'm generous, not because I'm clueless, but because I honestly believed he was about to promote me. If you're already shaking your head, trust me, I'm right there with you. The moment I walked into that banquet hall, the one I'd put a four-figure deposit on, I felt something cold wrap around my stomach. Not fear, not anger, just this quiet, sinking clarity that I'd been stupid in a very specific, very avoidable way. I guess the story really starts a month earlier, when my boss, Daniel, pulled me into a conference room and shut the door, like he was about to confess to a crime. You've carried this project, he told me. Everyone knows it. I just need you to trust me a little longer. Next cycle, it's you. Guaranteed. And like an idiot, I trusted him. I'd built that project from the ground up. I'd eaten late nights, missed weekends, patched disasters he created, and made him look good so many times, HR probably thought he walked on water. So when he said he couldn't put the party reservation on the department card right now because of some temporary freeze, and he'd reimburse me Monday, I didn't blink. I put my personal card down, smiled through the pain, and told myself it was an investment in my own future. 30 minutes of my life to reserve a venue. A hit to my bank account that I convinced myself I'd forget in a week. I didn't tell my girlfriend. I didn't tell my friends. The shame of being that guy, the employee who pays for the boss's celebration, was already simmering underneath the surface. But the real hook came the night of the party. I arrived exactly on time, 7 odd p.m. Sharp. I wasn't even on the official group invite. Daniel had told me, "You know the address already," as if that explained anything. I walked up to the building, dressed better than I probably needed to be, and the first red flag hit me before I even opened the door. A coworker I'd worked with for 3 years saw me from the sidewalk and looked away like he hadn't. Inside, it got worse. The place looked incredible. Catered tables, crystal glasses, giant printed banners with Daniel's face on them, the kind of setup that made you wonder whether he thought he'd become the CEO instead of middle management. And all I could think was, my money did this. The lighting, the decorations, the overpriced charcuterie boards, every detail had a price tag I recognized. People were already gathering around the bar. The playlist was curated. There was a slideshow running on a giant LED screen. Everyone seemed to know their place, their conversations, their roles for the night. Everyone except me. I hovered near the entrance for a second longer than normal, waiting for a wave, a smile, something. Instead, I got the same expression over and over, that tiny double-take people make when they think, "Why is he here?" I pushed deeper into the room, forcing myself to breathe normally, telling myself I was imagining it. Daniel was in the center of the crowd, laughing with his arm around one of the directors. When he finally noticed me, his reaction wasn't relief or welcome. It was irritation. He lifted his chin at me like I was a waiter. "Hey," he said, just that. Not, "Glad you made it." Not, "Thanks for handling the deposit." Just, "Hey." And then he turned back to the director before my mouth even opened. I told myself I was overthinking, that he was busy, that the night would get better. But then I noticed something else. The slideshow didn't include a single photo of me. Not one. There were pictures of Daniel shaking hands with interns, Daniel pointing at a whiteboard someone else drew on, Daniel smiling with people who barely worked on the project, but no me. No sign I'd been there through every fire and deadline. I felt stupid for expecting anything different. But still, I stood there staring at that screen like it owed me an apology. And then came the moment that truly broke the illusion. His assistant, Megan, walked up to me with a clipboard in her hands. "Oh," she said when she saw me, "you made it." It didn't sound like a greeting. It sounded like an accidental confession. "What does that mean?" I asked. She hesitated for a second too long. "I just didn't see you on the list." "The list you made using the invites he approved?" I pressed. She swallowed. Didn't answer. And that's when something inside me clicked. Not loudly, not violently, but quietly, like a lock turning the wrong way. Because for the first time, standing under those warm lights I paid for, in a room full of people who were pretending not to notice me, I realized something that should have been obvious from the start. I wasn't a guest here. I was an expense. And everything about the night, from the missing invite to the empty acknowledgement to the way people skirted around me like a stain on the carpet, told me I was about to learn why. But that moment, that cold tightening in my chest when I understood I didn't belong in the room I paid for, that was just the beginning. I wish I could say I walked into that party clueless, that the shock hit me all at once. But the truth is uglier. I'd been ignoring the signs for months. The small things came first. Like when Daniel started introducing me to new hires, "See, our reliable guy," which sounds like a compliment until you've heard it enough times to understand. It means the guy we can dump everything on. Or when he joked in a meeting that if anything goes wrong, we'll blame him. He's got the patience for it. And the room laughed like it wasn't a pattern that had been wearing me down for years. Then there were the bigger things, the credit stealing, the meeting where I'd spent 2 weeks preparing a full roadmap, only for him to take the printout from my hands and say, "Thanks, team. I'll walk leadership through this," before I even sat down. Or the time I stayed until midnight fixing an issue he'd caused. And the next morning, he told the director, "I don't know how I managed it, but the system's stable now." Managed it. He couldn't even code. I had all these moments stacked inside me like a pile of ignored bills, and walking into that party's just brought them all out of storage. The worst part was pretending I didn't care. I slid through the room with a drink I didn't want, trying to look normal while every detail stabbed at me. The decorations, elegant, expensive, were exactly what he'd chosen after telling me he didn't want anything too flashy, because we should be responsible with the budget. His concern for the budget evaporated once my bank account was footing the bill. People clinked glasses and said things like, "He deserved this," and "He's the reason we hit the deadline," and every word sat heavy in my throat. These were people who had watched me drag that project across the finish line with my teeth, and now they were rewriting the story in real time. At one point, I walked past a cluster of coworkers, and one of them, quiet, nice guy, someone I'd helped a dozen times, said, yeah, Daniel's tough sometimes, but you have to admit he pulled off a miracle this quarter." I didn't say anything. I didn't trust myself to. I drifted toward the bar, needing a second to breathe, when I heard a voice behind me. "Are you supposed to be back here?" It was one of the interns. Nervous smile, eyes darting away immediately. "Yeah," I said. "I work here." "Oh, right. Sorry." She rushed off like she'd bumped a stranger instead of the person who trained her. It should have made me angry, but instead it felt like confirmation. Everyone knew their role tonight. I wasn't part of the script. Then mid-sip, the slideshow changed to a section titled Leadership Vision. It was just Daniel. Speech clips. Photos of him pointing at screens. Shots of him standing behind my desk, my setup, my notes, like he owned every pixel. Not a single frame of me. Not even in the background. My jaw went tight. I put the glass down before I shattered it. "What do you think?" I turned. It was Mark from accounting. Good guy, but oblivious. "Looks expensive," I said. He laughed. "Daniel said the department card covered everything. Didn't even blink." My stomach twisted. "Oh, really?" "Yeah," said he handled it personally. Big gesture. I felt something warm rise in my chest. Not rage yet, but something close. A kind of moral nausea. I opened my mouth to answer, but then I heard two voices behind me. Daniel's and HR's. I didn't mean to eavesdrop, but their tone made me still. "Move him off after tonight," Daniel was saying. "He's solid, but he's not leadership material. Too earnest. And we can't keep pretending he contributed it at that level." HR chuckled. "Well, it's good you're taking ownership. Optics matter." "Exactly," Daniel said. "After this party, we'll transition him to the support rotation, quietly. No fuss. And the budget thing? Oh, the deposit? He put it on his card. Can you believe that? Some people are just desperate to please. The laugh they shared didn't sound human. I didn't move. Couldn't. Every word hit me with the precision of a hammer. Move him off. Not leadership material. Desperate to please? Erase his contributions? The worst part wasn't the scheme itself. It was how casual it was. Like they'd already forgotten I existed. Like I was just a box on a spreadsheet they were about to drag into another column. I straightened up slowly. My hands weren't shaking. My breathing didn't spike. Instead, something inside me settled. A quiet, stabilizing clarity I hadn't felt in months. A simple fact formed in my mind, sharp as glass. They really thought I'd stay quiet forever. That was the moment the irritation finally hardened into something cleaner, something sharper, something that felt almost freeing. I stepped away from the bar, weaving through the crowd with one thought running steady and calm. They have no idea what's coming, because everything they'd been hiding from, every credit theft, every lie, every piece of pressure, I had documented. Every email, every message, every file version with my initials embedded, every meeting where he'd use my work word for word, all of it. And tonight, the night I'd paid for, the night they planned to bury me, that was the night they dug their own hole. I reached the far corner of the room, just out of sight, and opened my phone. But that was just the beginning. As I scrolled to the folder labeled June, evidence, a thought flicked through my head. Quiet, controlled, with the weight of a final decision. That night, I stopped being the hero. When I stepped into the far corner of that banquet hall and opened the folder on my phone, it didn't feel like planning revenge. It felt like documenting a fire I'd spent too long trying to put out. The truth is, I'd been keeping records, not because I expected this moment, but because I'd learned, slowly, painfully, that with Daniel, you needed proof. He could twist anything into his version of events. I just never imagined I'd use all of it in one night. I scrolled through the files, timestamps of the project drafts he'd deleted, screenshots of him messaging me at midnight telling me to fix this before anyone sees, meeting notes where he presented my ideas word for word, the email where he told me, "You can just put the deposit on your card. Finance will reimburse. Promise." All the things he assumed I'd never keep, because people like him rely on people like me to stay quiet. I kept my phone low, hidden by the dim corner lighting. The music thumped through the walls, happy, generic, celebratory. It didn't match the pressure in my chest, but I realized that wasn't panic. It was decision. First step, the money. I opened my banking app and found the pending charge labeled with the venue's name. The deposit had gone through, but the balance, the large one, hadn't settled yet. There was a button beneath it. Report issue, cancel authorization. I tapped it. The system processed for a moment. Then, authorization canceled. That single line felt like oxygen. Inside the hall, a cheer went up. Daniel must have said something loud and self-congratulatory. I slipped my phone into my pocket and moved toward the exit doors, pushing them open just enough to step outside into the night air. Step 2. The truth. I opened my email. The draft I'd prepared weeks ago, out of frustration, out of self-preservation, out of something I didn't have words for at the time, was still sitting there, addressed to finance oversight, HR senior review, and the director I actually respected. Subject line: project ownership and resource mismanagement. Immediate review requested. Inside were every proof of the credit theft, evidence of manipulated reporting, screenshots of him dodging company policy, and my final paragraph outlining, calmly and professionally, that I had paid out of pocket for an official company event after being pressured to do so. All facts, no emotion, no accusations, just proof. My finger hovered over send, not trembling, not sweating, just steady. I hit it. The moment the message left my screen, something loosened in my shoulders. The kind of loosening that feels like standing up straight for the first time in months. A text popped up immediately from one of the finance directors. "I'll call you first thing Monday. Stay reachable." That was enough. I slipped the phone away and walked back inside. The hall looked different now, not physically, same lights, same music, same overpriced decorations, but the energy had shifted for me. I wasn't trapped here anymore. I wasn't the one being evaluated. They were. Daniel spotted me when I re-entered and plastered on a smile that looked more like ownership than warmth. "There he is," he said loudly, "the backbone of the logistical side." The room clapped politely. He didn't mean the words. And for once, I didn't pretend he did. Then someone, Megan, said, "Do you want to say a few words?" in a tone that suggested she expected me to decline. Daniel nodded as if he was giving me permission. That did it. I stepped forward, took the mic without waiting for approval, and looked out at the faces in front of me. People I'd worked beside quietly, people who had benefited from my silence, people who were about to understand exactly how misplaced their assumptions were. "Sure," I said, voice calm. The room quieted faster than I expected. I didn't give a speech. I didn't attack. I didn't even raise my voice. I just told the truth. "I'm glad this project succeeded," I began. "A lot of people here put in real effort. Some more than others." A few chuckles. They died quickly. "And I appreciate being part of the team, even if some contributions didn't make it into the slideshow." A ripple through the room. Daniel shifted. HR glanced at each other. "But the thing I'm most proud of tonight," I continued, "is that this celebration happened at all, even if it required a personal out-of-pocket payment to secure the venue, since the department card was unavailable." Silence. The kind that signals oxygen leaving a room. I watched faces change, finance whispering, directors straightening, HR paling. Daniel forced a laugh, too loud. "Oh, come on, man, it was temporary, I kept talking, directly over him. No hard feelings. Just clarity. Since this event marks the end of my role on the project, I'm happy I could contribute, even if I wasn't informed of the reassignment that supposedly happens after tonight. You could hear the ice cracking under the floorboards. People stared at Daniel. Some discreetly stepped away from him. And then came the micro-catharsis, the line that felt like shedding a weight that never should have been mine. I don't need titles, I don't need credit, but I'm done being the quiet fix to someone else's performance. I handed Daniel the mic. He didn't take it. I unclipped my badge, set it on the nearest table with a soft click that cut through the room harder than any shout, and looked him in the eye. "You can keep the promotion," I said quietly. "I'm keeping my spine." Then I walked toward the exit. Behind me, voices rose. Questions, whispers, HR scrambling, finance pulling out their phones, Daniel hissing a curse under his breath. It sounded messy, chaotic. Exactly what happens when the foundation finally cracks. They thought I was gone. I wasn't. Because the real fallout hadn't even begun. And for the first time in months, maybe years, I felt absolutely calm. I walked out of that banquet hall without looking back. Not because I wanted to be dramatic, but because there was nothing in that room worth holding on to anymore. The night air felt colder than I expected, sharp enough to sting, but I breathed deeper than I had in months. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't carrying anyone else's weight. I drove home in silence. No music, no replaying conversations, no anxiety about tomorrow, just quiet. The kind that settles when a long overdue decision is finally made. By morning, the fallout had already begun. At 8:12 a.m., I received the first email. "Finance Oversight. We've initiated a review. Please send any additional documentation." I forwarded everything without commentary. At 9:03, HR Senior Review wrote, "Please confirm the circumstances of the event deposit. Was this an instruction from your direct manager?" I replied with a single line, "Yes, documentation attached." There was nothing else to say. By noon, 3 directors had seen the email thread. One of them, someone who'd always been decent, called me and spoke in a tone that told me things were already unraveling. "I can't say much," he said, "but you did the right thing. Stay reachable." Reachable. They kept using that word. Funny how urgent people get when the truth stops being quiet. The next 72 hours moved fast. Finance froze the remaining party payments, which meant the venue called Daniel directly. I wasn't on that phone call, but I didn't need to be. I could imagine the panic in his voice when they told him the balance was now on him, not the company. HR launched an internal audit they couldn't bury. Too many people had witnessed the speech, and too many emails were already in the system. Even the director, who'd been cheering beside him that night, suddenly stepped back like Daniel was contagious. By Wednesday, the company locked Daniel out of several systems pending review. By Friday, he was escorted out of the building. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't public. Just a quiet walk through the lobby with 2 HR reps, and the tight-faced realization that his kingdom wasn't as solid as he believed, and I didn't have to lift a finger. Mini catharsis. Choices always send invoices. His finally arrived. I didn't go back, not for one last meeting, not for closure, not for any final conversation. My badge was still lying where I left it, on that table under the warm lights I paid for. But leaving didn't mean drifting. 2 days after Daniel's exit, a director from another company messaged me on LinkedIn. He'd heard about my project from someone who actually told the truth. "We'd like to talk," he wrote. I met with them that week. They didn't ask why I left my previous job. They didn't ask why my boss wasn't the one presenting the work. They just wanted to see the project. I walked them through it, clean, factual, steady. For the first time ever, nobody interrupted. Nobody claimed credit. Nobody corrected a single word. The next morning, they sent an offer. Better pay. Better role. Actual leadership track. They didn't promise anything, they just showed me the contract. I signed it in less than an hour. The shift in my life was immediate. My mornings got quieter in a way that felt earned. I started cooking real breakfasts instead of swallowing coffee like fuel. I went to the gym again, not because I was trying to escape stress, but because I had space to think. Even my apartment felt different, like the walls weren't watching me drag myself through another cycle of being underappreciated. Every so often, someone from my old team tried to reach out, not to apologize, most people never do, but to ask what really happened. I heard rumors. Daniel says the audit was unfair. HR made it sound like you blindsided everyone. I gave the same answer every time. I told the truth, that's all. If they wanted more, they could look for it themselves. The only person who didn't reach out was Daniel. Not a message, not an explanation, not even an attempt to spin the story. That silence told me everything. People like him don't apologize, they just look for the next place to hide. About a month after the night of the party, I got an automatic email from HR's system. An old thread, accidentally CC'd. Promotion rescinded. Manager terminated. Audit closed. 12 words. 12 clean, quiet words. I stared at them for a second, then archived the email. I didn't screenshot it. I didn't send it to anyone. I didn't celebrate. Not because it didn't matter, but because justice doesn't always need an audience. My life settled into something I didn't recognize at first. Stability. The kind where the ceiling doesn't feel like it's about to collapse on you. When you finally stop trying to earn respect from people who treat it like currency. On a Sunday morning, I sat at my kitchen table with a mug of coffee, the sun coming through the blinds, my laptop open to nothing urgent. No messages demanding midnight fixes. No urgent tasks passed off with a smile. No fear of what someone else might screw up next. Just quiet. And for the first time in a long time, the quiet felt like mine. I didn't check social media, but word eventually floated back to me through people I trusted. Daniel had moved across the state, taking a lower-level job under someone who, according to a whisper, doesn't put up with his crap. His reputation? Not ruined, not destroyed, just honest now. A version of the truth, finally visible. And me? I wasn't angry anymore. Anger needs fuel, peace doesn't. That was the last time I ever paid for a party I was never meant to be a guest at. The story ends quietly because real satisfaction isn't loud. It's waking up every morning knowing you don't owe anything to people who only took. It's being able to look at your life and see your own reflection, not someone else's shadow. And sitting in my new place with my coffee, my schedule, my work, my dignity intact, I realized something simple. I didn't lose anything that night. I just stopped financing my own disrespect.